Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How Superstar VAs Can Be Your Secret Weapon to Success with Ingrid Bayer. Today, you are listening using your computer speaker system by default. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions to Ingrid by typing them into the questions pane on the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A section at the end. Ingrid Bayer is a thought leader, transformational thinker, and one of the brightest minds in the VA industry today. For over 30 years, Ingrid has worked across many industries, including photography, IT, entertainment, stockbroking, legal, real estate, and medical. In 2008, Ingrid started operating as a virtual assistant from her home office in regional New South Wales, Australia. Within 2 years, she had grown her business to include managing and overseeing a team of VAs. Her sound knowledge of business administration, together with her ability to think outside the square, facilitate conversations around possibility, and then move forward to implement winning processes and ideas ensures her client's success. Ingrid now devotes her time to working strategically with the Australian VA industry and its stakeholders, and specialising in working with EAs and PAs from around Australia and around the world in making the transition to becoming a successful VA. Ingrid's passion and life purpose is to make a tangible difference in the lives of VAs and their clients by uncovering and exposing the elephant in the room. That is identifying the missing ingredients in the VA toolbox in a way that empowers, transforms them, and inspires the VA industry and its stakeholders to be the best, expect the best, and deliver the best beyond mere technical skills. I will now hand over to Ingrid.
Thanks so much, Ida. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with your members in relation to, this whole new world that we're in. And virtual assistants have been around for a little while now, but I reckon most of you now will have a fair idea of the ability that we do have because of this dreaded COVID situation that we're all going through, the whole world, and we're all in this together. So virtual assistants basically are that opportunity, or they give businesses that opportunity to outsource to home-based workers. And yeah, like I said, you will all have had some sort of exposure to experiencing the opportunity of working from home, I'm sure, like the majority of the rest of the workforce. So it is a new idea, but I want to go through a little bit more about how the virtual assistant industry operates and, what defines a great VA and how they can be your secret weapon to business success, and certainly how to find and onboard them. So without further ado, we'll get into this. So a little bit of background about me, which Ida did touch on. I set up my own virtual assistant business in 2008. My background, like a lot of really great VAs, is about 25 years of legal secretarial. So, and small business administration. So I have a really good idea of what it takes to run a small business. And, I've got those administration skills that helped me set my virtual assistant business up. So that was my first business, VBiz. And then in 2017, I decided it was a good idea to set up VA Institute. And VA Institute really was brought on, I guess, by the need that I saw out there in the community of virtual assistants to get set up properly and to really help them maximise their success. So what we saw up until then, and my experience working with other virtual assistants, was that some of them set up great, some of them without that business background and business knowledge weren't setting up so well. So, people would ask me, how do you get set up? And obviously, from that point on, I went, well, I may as well set this up into a business myself. So I did. And that's VA Institute, that was born. And then in the last 18 months, we set up as part of VA Institute, I guess it's like an arm of VA Institute, is Find a VA. So this is definitely a place where Australian businesses, and it's very much geared towards the Australian business landscape, Australian businesses can go and source a quality certified Australian virtual assistant. So that's kind of what we hang our hat on. And it's not easy to get into Find a VA for a virtual assistant. It's free for business owners to connect with Find a VA and post their job leads on Find a VA. But for virtual assistants, they have to jump through quite a few hoops. which, you know, absolutely demonstrate that they are set up properly and set up as any business should be, and as most of us are, or all of us are, I hope. Now, I should say here too, Ida, please interrupt me if there's any pressing questions, and you know, I will stop from time to time and ask if there's any questions, because I do appreciate there's a lot of information, and I want to serve you best and help you to understand this whole virtual assistant world that I'm going to take you through. So here's the beginning of that little journey. So what exactly is a VA? Pretty simple. A virtual assistant is a self-employed independent contractor. So they're not an employee generally. They provide various administrative support services from their own office, usually it's home-based, to what we find is small, even micro and medium-sized businesses. So that tends to be the way a virtual assistant in Australia, or the people that I certainly know, operate and set up. Some of the services, now there's a whole list for you. If you want to copy that screen, we'll do that, because, you know, it's actually really the services that VAs can offer is limited pretty much by whether they can access them from anywhere. So, you know, a lot of the programs we access these days are cloud-based programs. And so, you know, it can be all these range of services that we see. So what we find is virtual assistant, the term virtual assistant is really an umbrella term that's used to describe a whole lot of specialties under that umbrella. So you'll find that some people offer just bookkeeping, for example, but there'll be others who have a couple of different areas that they cover, like, for example, general administration or executive administration support to small business owners. Freeing them up to do what they do best rather than struggling with the fiddly stuff in the back end. You know, we've got website, IT support, graphic design, you name it. You know, a lot of VAs can do that sort of stuff, and it's great because what happens is the VAs who deliver these key services are generally experts in that area, and it's almost siloing off different aspects of any services you need looked after. And yeah, it just makes it a lot better, I guess, because you are working with people who know their stuff and know what they're doing. So what we're seeing lately with all the changes that we're, you know, people working from home, is things like helping events to be run online, just like this one is. So doing that kind of support for people who didn't actually have to do that in the past. What else? We're seeing the rise of online learning. So, you know, programs being delivered on a variety of online learning platforms. Had I had a crystal ball, I think I would have gone out and bought shares in Zoom, because, my goodness, wouldn't we be doing well if we did? So, you know, that's just an example of different things, I guess. You know, looking at that list, it's certainly, there certainly would be more, but I picked the eyes out of what I think is pretty much the major areas of service that VAs provide. So feel free to ask me questions if you know, you've got a service that you're not sure fits into that. But I guess the rule of thumb is it accessible? Like, can people access the software and in order to provide the services from home? And if the answer is yes, then generally a VA can support you. So let's think about what makes a great VA, and that's my passion, is helping people get set up as VAs of excellence, superstar VAs, we like to call them. So number one is, of course, they've got to be great communicators. Without the benefit of sitting in an office and being in someone's actual physical space, we need to overcompensate with communication. And so virtual assistants who aren't great communicators, I can guarantee, will not survive, just like anyone else in business. So they need to be great communicators. They need to be able to make sure that what you're hearing as a client is replicated, and you know, the expectations are being met, of course. So that's really important. Obviously a no-brainer. High attention to detail. Yeah, we need things done really well and properly. And most superstar VAs will definitely demonstrate that ability. You know, what makes a great VA also comes down to, you know, the honesty and the ethics and the integrity that as a business owner they represent to their clients. What that means for superstar VAs is that they will have clients who hang around. It'll be almost like having a casual job, really. You keep your clients because your clients absolutely love you. I've had clients since, the longest client I've got still has been on board for 10 years. But, you know, the reality is we do end up having long-term clients because we develop that relationship, great communication, we have that high attention to detail, and they learn to, well, they trust us, and, you know, we end up being that right-hand person. Solution focused, so great VAs will come to you with a problem, but they'll also have a solution. They will have thought it through. They're business owners themselves, and so therefore, you know, that's what sets them apart. They're also usually very accessible, and they'll give you great ways to contact them. In terms of, you know, how we use technology, we certainly use things like Messenger nowadays, Skype, Zoom for our meetings. You know, we're highly accessible. So let's talk about money and how much do VAs charge. Now, I'm talking about Australian VAs, but I am going to talk a little bit about offshore as well, because we are a global industry, right? And it's really important to address that whole aspect of offshore and onshore. So in Australia, I've done some research, certainly VA Institute, we've done a bit of research within our industry, and Aussie VAs definitely charge between about $30 to $70 per hour. That's a big, broad range, and every VA will be slightly different in what they charge. But what we've seen is that definitely the average, based on a recent survey we did, most of Aussie VAs will charge between $40 and $50 per hour. I do have a really great cost comparison document that shows the difference, so the cost saving if you were comparing that to a full-time employee. And I'm certainly happy to provide that to anyone who's interested in understanding, you know, like, sure, $40 an hour is not cheap, I get that. But when you compare the fact that VAs, or the way VAs charge, which I'll show you in a moment, you will see there is definitely a cost saving benefit. Because I guarantee that if anyone has full-time employees, unless they're machines, which maybe we're moving towards that, artificial intelligence, they do not work 100% of the time. VAs charge you for the time spent on a task, and that's the big difference. Okay, so how do VAs charge? There's a variety of ways that VAs will charge, and it will often depend on the sort of services that they are delivering to you. So, you know, some VAs will just come on an hourly rate. So it will be a flat agreed hourly rate, and it can definitely be charged to the minute. I certainly have, the majority of my clients, I charge an hourly rate, and I track my time, and I provide a report, attach it to my invoice, and with comments about what I was doing during those particular blocks of time, so people could validate. And also, you know, it's really important to me to be very, very ethical when I'm charging. So hourly rates often worked really well, especially when we don't know, you know, from one week to the next, what's going to be occurring within the services that I'm providing. There are other VAs who will charge a retainer. So that's usually blocks of hours, and generally it's charged in advance, and it will expire after a specified period. I personally don't advocate that method of charging, because I think that it's kind of setting you up for a little bit of an issue in the future, because number one, how do you know how many hours a job's going to take? And, you know, like the fact that these hours expire after a certain period can be really detrimental, and it can mean that the actual hourly rate ends up being a lot more. Anyway, some people really like doing this stuff. But yeah, so when I'm training VAs, we certainly don't advocate the retainer package. What we do advocate is what we call an outcomes-based package, which is this one here. So, you know, that is where someone would say, for example, you know, I've got a specified number of, or a specified task that I want you to cover for me each week, and it might be, like, an example would be I had a client come to me and he wanted me to check emails, organise his travel, you know, get him sorted each and every week. I had a really good idea of what his business looked like. I knew he had a handful of really high net worth clients, and so they required, you know, some pretty high attention to detail and keeping them happy because they were the lifeblood of his business, basically. And I estimated, you know, a daily time spend on his work and came up with a quote based on that. And that worked really well because he was paying a budgeted amount. I would invoice him in retrospect. So for, you know, time past, I would invoice him every week for, you know, that particular agreed amount. And what I was doing was basically, you know, covering a particular service for him so he could just kind of not worry about it. He could take his hands off and do what he liked to do within the business. You'll also see people charging these outcomes-based packages with things like social media, for example, or specific tasks that you can actually bundle up and say, look, you know, for this, it's going to be X dollars a week or a month or whatever it is. So yeah, there are different ways to charge, and it really does depend on you and the services that you need supported. So the benefits of engaging a quality VA. So really these are the benefits of working with virtual assistants. They are scalable. So we can scale up, and in times like this, we can scale back, which is a huge benefit. So what that's meant for our virtual assistant community is when their clients experienced, you know, a drop off, which many clients did due to COVID, the VA was able to say, look, that's fine, let's scale back, you know, I can be here for you, but you know, you don't need to guarantee. Generally, we don't need to have a guarantee of a set number of hours depending on the arrangement you've got with your VA. They're not employees, right? So you can't, with an employee, well, you know, I know lots has been changing, but generally speaking, an employee is employed for a specific, under a specific agreement for a set number of hours. And so, yeah, VAs can be very scalable. And I find that that kind of works as well at Christmas time, for example, when, you know, most of my clients' work drops off. So, you know, it suits me fine. I take a holiday. But I keep the wheels turning for my client during that holiday. I take my laptop with me, check in, make sure everyone's happy, that clients are being looked after, like their customers are being looked after. And so, yeah, I can scale up and scale down. Also very flexible. So flexible in terms of, you know, the hours that I can provide my service. I can jump on weekends if my client needs me to. I can work really early in the morning. I have one client who, and this sounds really crazy, but it works really well for me because I'm a morning person. He needed to have somebody meet with him to get him organised for his day at 5 a.m. So I did the 5 a.m. call every day, and we ran through his tasks, and I, you know, got him sorted, and it was fine. And so, yeah, that flexibility, you would never, I would imagine, ask an employee to be up at 5 to have a meeting with you. But there you go. Because I'm a business owner, I'm happy to set those times that work for me. Like I said as well, when you have VAs who are offering a particular service or a suite of skills, they are specialised in that area. So you're not getting a jack of all trades, and I would be really careful if someone said they could do everything because, you know, the saying, jack of all trades, master of none. So, you know, I think it's really important to get people to specialise in their particular area, and that's what you can find. The other great thing about the Australian, well, VAs in particular, but Australian VAs, we have great connections. So, you know, if you have engaged a VA to do bookkeeping, for example, but then you go, oh my gosh, I need someone to do social media, that VA will have a network at their fingertips to be able to connect you with somebody who can support you, or you can go on to find a VA, of course. But yeah, you know, definitely these VAs have great connections, and they'll often know a lot more and have a lot more connections that will help you in your business. And of course, they're business owners themselves. So, you know, that's a really important factor when you're thinking about the benefits of working with a VA and the cost. And like I said, I'm really happy to run through that provide you with a cost comparison document so you can kind of see. But what we take into account when we're thinking about employees compared to virtual assistants is that virtual assistants have their rate, and it may be that hourly rate, or it may be a package or an outcomes-based package, but that's it, right? You're not paying the extra on costs like superannuation, payroll tax, as well as the overheads that often you forget about, but it's things like, the coffee in the coffee machine, the lunches, the training, the whatever else that you have to actually spend money on, as well as, part of the rent is going to be attributed to that person, their desk, their software, their hardware. So, those kind of things add up to a whole cost saving aspect. So like I said, if you've got rapid business growth, VAs can scale up. Over Christmas, VAs can scale back, or maybe you get really busy, so VAs can scale up again. If you go away, fantastic. VAs can jump in and help you out and scale their time up during that period. If there's illness or injury, again, a VA can jump in for you and really help you out in those situations. I want to just show you a quick case study just to kind of give you an example of how working with VAs does actually work. So this is my business. And up until 18 months ago, I did it all myself. So when things started to get busier and my business, like many businesses, took a little bit of time to kind of get a little bit of growth occurring, and when it did, it occurred fairly quickly. So I pulled in, I guess, like I've talked about, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. Like I've talked about, is siloing off various areas or various, it's like an org chart, pulling in VAs who can specialise in particular aspects of the business that I needed support in. So I have someone now who does my sales and marketing. I have someone who supports me with administration, and I used to do all this myself. I have someone who does all my IT stuff, which has been amazing. And I have someone who also does some training for me. So, underneath there sits, different aspects of the business that I used to do, but now we, sometimes I have one person doing a few things, but basically this is their area, and I pull them into those areas of expertise. And that now I have 7 VAs who actually provide services for me. So it's been a really interesting journey. And for me, it's great to actually see how, like the flip side, I was a VA, right? And I was providing the service, and now I am a client and I'm receiving the service. And it really, really does work. And it does definitely help me do things like this, get out there and talk to people, run programs, and not get bogged down in the day-to-day things that we as business owners have to cover off. So, a bit of an example, and I think a valid example too, and it has helped me grow, most certainly. So how do you figure out, if you're thinking, wow, I'd really like to get some support, but I don't actually know what to outsource, so I'm not really sure. That's a really interesting thing, because what we find is, it's like, I call it failure to launch, because you want a VA, but you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And what can I trust people with at this point? So what I suggest, if you're wanting to get a VA on board and try it out, sit down and do a self-audit. Spend, like I say here, a minimum of two days to 1 week tracking everything that you do in your business. It'll be laborious, but it'll help you get a really good snapshot of exactly, what it is that you do and what you potentially don't have to do, right? So look at the results and then really ask yourself honestly, am I really spending my time on these things? Is my time being spent on the best things, on the things that actually I need to be spending my time on? So, think about that and be honest with yourself. And, really, I guess, if you're looking at that, that'll give you a fairly good overview, but clarify really what tasks could a VA take care of. So, it might be things like where you actually spend some time thinking about specific times, days that work needs to be done. You know, it's those kind of things. Get a bit clear on exactly what you could outsource. But yeah, failure to launch is very common. We find people do say, oh gosh, I'd love your services, but oh my God, where do I start? So it is that holds people up. And my advice to people is start with one task. So, you know, like my example of my organisation chart, I started with admin support because that got me out of, you know, the everyday stuff that was driving me bonkers and keeping me up till midnight, really. So once I handed that off, I could see, well, okay, that is working really well. And now let's pull someone in to do another aspect of the business so I can kind of let go a bit more. It can be different and it can be difficult. I would have to say that I'm probably one of the worst clients that my VAs have, because I find it really difficult to let go. So we have agreements, like verbal agreements about how we operate, you know, and I'm very aware that I don't want to micromanage my VAs. They're very invested in my business, which is fantastic. So you know how to find your own superstar VA. I would suggest you contact an Australian network such as Find a VA. The worst thing you can do, I don't know if anyone here has done it, is go onto one of those Facebook groups, like, you know, one of the business networks, and say, oh, I need a VA, or I need someone to help me do X, Y, Z. You watch, you get like 25, more than that. You get like 100 responses within very quick succession, because people will definitely respond to things like that. And then you've all of a sudden created work for yourself. So let us help you, and we triage the leads for you. We triage the VAs for you and make sure they're the best ones to help you. When you get a list of VAs that you want to look at a bit closer, make sure you go and review the details. Much like any position, you review the details. They should have documents like a professional profile, which is similar to a CV, which is also, it's just a flyer about what they can do and, you know, what their business setup is. And they also should have a cover email, which addresses the key services that you're requiring for the role. You would then go and connect with the VA or VAs who most suit your needs, and you would arrange for an interview. Just because they're a VA doesn't mean they don't need an interview. You want to talk to them. You want to feel like you resonate with them, like there's some sort of synergy there. There's no point working with someone that doesn't suit your particular style. It's a great time to get clear on how you both work. Check them out for great communication, check out their website, you know, make sure that they're fully set up properly. Then, you know, confirm engagement by reviewing and signing an agreement. So it's really important, like any business, that you enter into an agreement with a VA, because that clarifies and sets the scene for exactly how things will work. And I'm sure you would do it in your own business. And onboarding your VA. So of course we talked about clarity, you know, making sure that they understand how you work, what the job specs are. If you've got any sort of SOPs or anything like that, give them to your VA, because they need your support as well. Training. So, you know, there may be some particular aspects of the way you, or the services that you have your VA do, that you want them to learn the way you do them, basically. Great way for training is this platform. Zoom is fantastic. You can record what you can capture your screen, you can record it and save it and send it to people. In fact, I recommend this is a fantastic time-saving device that you can implement into your own business. Communication, of course. Really set the expectation right there and then. Make sure that your communication styles match. So if you're somebody who needs to be talking and not emailing, make sure that your VA understands that, and that you have an agreement about how that's going to work. So like anything, you need to set the expectation. You know, some people will be emailers, some people will want to message on Messenger or send Skype messages through. I still have a client who once a week will send me a Skype message and say, hey Ingrid, I've sent you through an email with some work. And it's like, yeah, okay, I knew that was coming. But for him, that is important to him, because he knows he's being heard, of course. So communication. So set it up, make sure it works for you guys. Things like great questions to be asking is, you know, how do we communicate with each other when there's an emergency? You know, what's the best way to stay in touch? I had a client who, we had an agreement, because I was doing a lot of travel organisation for him. We had an agreement that when it was urgent, and if it was urgent, I would send him an SMS, and only then. And he would look at his SMS and respond to me, because he would know that it was urgent. And that worked really, really well. So set those things up so you don't get let down, because, you know, being remote, we need to have those processes set up. And feedback, you know, like anyone, like an employee, you know, anyone needs that sort of feedback to understand exactly what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. I would always say to my clients in the first initial phase of me working with them that, you know, right now I'm learning and I may make mistakes. So please tell me if I have, because I'll add that to my SOP for you, and I will make sure that doesn't ever happen again. So, you know, really important to understand that feedback is a critical part of your relationship with a VA. Just because they're online doesn't mean they're not a real person. And, you know, if they're worth their salt, they'll want your feedback and they'll want to make you happy and exceed your expectations. So technology. So a lot of people might be interested in what sort of technology you can use to support virtual success. So we advocate these sort of things, like the different file sharing platforms like Dropbox, really big, Google Drive, becoming very common now, SharePoint, WeTransfer, again, communication. Zoom is like the bomb. It's replaced Skype for sure. Instant messaging platforms, group comms such as Slack. So Slack's great for groups. Project management. Asana is fantastic. We use Asana regularly in terms of keeping on top of different group projects, and you can actually set it up for free. Trello is fantastic as well. Some of these other things you might have had access to, you know, Basecamp, Teamwork, password storage. So really, really important if you don't have a password storage app. Most people have it on their phones, for example, and I know Chrome stores passwords as well, but having an encrypted password storage system is good, because, and one like Dashlane or LastPass, because you can share those encrypted password credentials with third parties, and you don't actually have to show them your password, because you know, it just drops in the whatever it is into the login. So yeah, think about things like that. Again, you can use them for free. So, you know, those kind of tools are really great for business. Time tracking, I have VAs set up My Hours or Toggle. Great way to, you know, really track your time and provide comments on what you're doing during that time. CRMs, of course, we've got a few different things to choose from. I'm currently checking out Monday, and also there's so many. There's new things every day. Zoho is really good. E-newsletters, so MailChimp, MailerLite, great platforms as well. Social media scheduling, so anyone who's into the social media area and wants support there, we have some scheduling tools that we use fairly regularly. Calendar booking, of course, saving your time. Acuity scheduling, you can book me. Calendly, of course, is one that we use. Bookkeeping, QuickBooks, MyOb, Xero, Rounded's huge. Like, that's a brand new, or not brand new, but it's a newcomer onto the scene and specially set up for freelancers. Screen recording, Loom. You can also use Zoom as well, of course. So yeah, so those things, again, if you have questions, just sing out to me, because I can definitely help you with understanding those different aspects. So let's quickly have a look at offshore versus onshore. So if anyone's ever experienced working with offshore VAs, I just want to run through, and if you haven't, I just want to run through the perceived benefits of hiring an offshore VA. They are cheap. They're definitely a lot cheaper than Australian VAs. They work while you're sleeping. That can be great. And you know, we often think that we're helping lift someone out of the gutter, so to speak. You know, we're giving them an income where they otherwise wouldn't have an income. So sometimes they're the benefits that we see, and, you know, we pat ourselves on the back for that. But the reality is, and I've seen this played out time and time again with business owners that I've come into contact with, who've had us fix up their stuff, the lower cost doesn't take into account the time required to fix up the work. You know, it does actually drive up the real cost to any business owner. I remember one of my clients was using offshore support to do transcription, and so he was just getting them to transcribe his notes or documents, and he, in the middle of his transcription, he yelled at his dog to get down, and that actually appeared in the transcription. So, I mean, look, you can get great solutions, don't get me wrong, but you do have to spend a bit of time quality controlling. That's all I'll say. When you're awake, so you know, yes, they do work when you're asleep, but when you're awake, they're often asleep. So it can be really hard to communicate with your VA who's located offshore. And contrary to what you might think, offshore VAs are often not independent contractors at all. They're often part of a large organisation, and quite coincidentally, those large organisations are run often by Western business owners. So you're actually not lifting them out of the gutter. So yeah, those perceptions that, you know, I wanted to just address those, but some of the risks, so that's the big thing that I want to talk about. When you compare Aussie VAs, so Australian businesses working with Australian VAs, you know, IP safety, of course, if you're working with offshore VAs, where is your, where's your data going? Like, what's happening to your own information? Is it safe? What's the quality? You know, think about that. Are you able to quality control? There will be cultural differences, and so, you know, you may experience problems as a result of that. There can be language misunderstandings, as I've explained, and legal differences. Actually, you know, do you even have an agreement with them, and does your agreement stand? Responsibility. So when something goes wrong, who's responsible? Are you going to be able to rely on that offshore VA to fix their mistakes? Whereas Australian VAs, they are business owners, so they understand business in Australia. So, you know, that in itself is a huge benefit. They do have a vested interest in building long-term relationships with clients. They want to have ongoing relationships. So, you know, of course, they're going to try and do the best they can do. They operate under the same laws that you do, so you can kind of feel confident about that. You know, there's no discrepancy there. And they also carry insurances, and I think that's a huge thing. So, you know, when things go wrong, if you've got someone offshore, you know, is insurance going to play a part, or are you going to be able to, like, if, for example, if something occurs and it's like a professional indemnity kind of thing, and you've got an offshore person doing your work, are you going to be able to claim if they cause the damage to your business? Probably not. Maybe, I don't know, but definitely if you have an Australian virtual assistant business owner set up with their insurance, then yes, you will. So the risk is mitigated. And also they don't need to be micromanaged, of course. They're generally getting it right the first time with a bit of direction, and they can actually pick up the phone and talk to your customers. In fact, I used to do that a lot for my clients, and nobody ever asked me where I was located. They, you know, just took it for granted. They were sitting in the boss's office, basically. So, you know, that is a huge benefit, getting people who can speak to your clients. And basically the other thing is that you are dealing with the person who actually does the work. The majority of VAs in Australia, the majority would be micro businesses where they would do all the work themselves. Some of them would have a team around them, but generally speaking, you're going to be able to speak to the person who does the work. So if you want more information on all this, on everything I've presented, please, 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 please feel free to get in touch with me. I can talk while I'm underwater about VAs and the benefits, and, you know, how to work with great VAs. there's our contact information there if you want to get in touch with Find a VA and you want to explore that a bit further. We've got a 1300 number which you're welcome to ring and leave a message, or you can jump onto Find a VA. Or I haven't got it on here, you can go onto VA Institute and get in touch with me that way. So vainstitute.com.au, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and it's just Ingrid Bayer on LinkedIn. So look, Ida, I've finished the presentation, but I'm certainly happy to open it up to questions right now if anyone has any.
Thank you, Ingrid. That was a great presentation, and thank you for taking the time to giving our members a glimpse of the world of VAs. We do have one question. This question is, what does your VA do for you in the way of sales and marketing?
Oh, okay, that's a really good question. So I have VAs so I have somebody who helps me when I get leads. So we have a process set up where they will contact the leads and schedule them in. Some leads I want personally scheduled in. I think it's, for me, I like the personal approach. So I get them to contact my leads. They'll send them an SMS. They'll phone my leads up. They'll email them, and they'll basically get in touch with them and communicate with them and get them locked into my calendar. So that's one of the things. I have another VA who actually does sales calls for me. So with people particularly who are wanting to get set up as VAs, those are the clients that I wanted to have the sales calls with. I have somebody who goes through the program information with potential VAs, and she is on a commission basis, and she gets some great sales in for me, that's for sure, and relieves me of the pressure of having to be on to that all the time. Right now I have an IT VA who's also part of my team, and we're working on a lead nurturing sequence. So, you know, we need to deal with that. So yeah, like, I mean, I am always getting people who are experts to help me with different aspects of the business. And so that's why I have those different areas. But hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Ingrid. Look, there doesn't appear to be any more questions. However, as Ingrid mentioned, feel free to send her an email. Obviously, her email address is on the screen at the moment, should any questions come to mind after the presentation. Now, tomorrow you will receive a follow-up email with today's recording and also along with the presentation that Ingrid has put together for us. So I think we'll wrap it up, Ingrid. So on behalf of Ingrid and APPA, thank you for all our participants for joining us today, and I hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Ida.
Thank you.